Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rohit, for the introduction. It's lovely to see you all here, despite the rain. Um, so we just heard from Subi how we can get a job into the tech industry, specifically cybersecurity. But if you're into data engineering and want to land the job, now is what we'll go through about what you will be doing as a data engineer in your day-to-day activities. Might be different stacks, that depends on the companies, but in a high level, how you orchestrate your pipelines, how you build your pipelines, and how you maintain your pipelines. To start with, hi everyone, I'm Anima Acharya. I'm a data engineer at Bingo Industries. So Bingo is a leading recycling and waste management company providing services across NSW, Victoria, and Queensland, and is helping business and communities move towards waste-free Australia. I'm also a Women Tech Mecca Ambassador, which is a Google-led community initiative to support and empower women in tech. So today, I'll take you through my journey from ETL, traditional ETL, which stands for extract, transform, and load, to automations, and how we can leverage different tools to build reliable, scalable, and automated data pipelines, along with the real-world examples of what we do at Bingo. So I started my journey as a data engineer by writing hundreds of scripts in SQL. So once I wrote those scripts, I had to manually deploy them into production, into development, and then in production, all while keeping my finger crossed that nothing breaks. So may I know, have you ever written SQL scripts to process and ingest data? Raise your hands if yes. Quite a few. Have you ever deployed your code in production and hope that it would not break anything? Every time? I can see someone saying every time. Yeah, I think that's most of our story. And if you have faced these challenges, you will see how automation can help your journey. So as I mentioned, I started with a traditional ETL, faced problems with deployments, and then as the data grew and as requirement became more complex, these manual approaches started being difficult to handle. So that's when I realized the need for automations. Years after, when I moved to Australia and when I joined Bingo, I started using tools like DBT, Airflow, CI/CD, and trust me, these shifting automations have streamlined the pipelines and made the workflows much more reliable and efficient. So before diving in much into the technical details, let's first look around the data ecosystem at Bingo. So in the events like this, when I talk to people, I get a lot of questions about what kind of data do you work with, because it's a waste management industry, which is far behind the traditional tech industries. So at Bingo, it is not just waste collection. We work with a wide varieties of traditional data, transactional data, financial data, sales data, and many more. In the screen, you can see few of the key data that we work with at Bingo. The first one being trucks and trailers. It's a waste management company, so waste needs to be picked up from one location to another location, for which trucks plays a major role in. So right now, there are more than 1,500 trucks currently in operations with Bingo. So we have all this information about the trucks, that their razor, size, the driver names, the entry and exit details, the inspection records, speed, mileage, whether they cross the average speed of the road speed, whether they violated road speeds, and all these data related to trucks and trailers. We also work with a majority of drivers' data. So there are more than 2,000 drivers currently working at Bingo. So we manage all the personal's driver data, their shifts and schedules, check-in and check-out, the truck assigned to them, the time that they started the shift, the waste that they collected, and all these kinds of informations. Recycling data, Bingo has 13 recycling centers across NSW, Queensland, and Victoria. And the important key to mention here is not all recycling centers accept all kinds of waste. For example, there are some recycling centers which accept iron, but some others might not. So there is this variations between the recycling cycles as well, recycling centers as well. So we use varieties of recycling data, their locations and details, sales record, transactional history, weight information, types of waste it collects, the quantity of waste it deals in a day-to-day or a weekly basis, all the data related to the recycling centers. And another important part, data sets is customers and job, the most important. So we have all these different customers across different states, and we deal with all the customers' data, their details, name, address, suburb, state, types of customers, their details, their service requests, their job status, the number of jobs they allocate to the bingo in a daily and weekly basis, the type of waste that request for, the value that the bingo is getting out of the data that the customer has, all their information, invoicing information, and all this. So with these all data sets, we have been working at Bingo to build our pipelines and also to get insights based on these to streamline the operational needs of the day-to-day activities. With that, let's see a few of the technologies that we will be going through in the slide. So for some of them being DBT, BigQuery, CI/CD, and Airflow. So let me give you a brief overview of what this technology does. So DBT, which stands for Data Build Tools, it's a SQL-based data transformation tools with version control, testing, and documentations. And another one is BigQuery, which is a service provided by Google, is a serverless scalable data warehouse, which allows SQL-based analytics on a large data sets and can work with petabytes of data. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment. So it automates code testing, validations, and deployment for reliable and efficient workflows. Last one being Airflow, which is an orchestration tool for scheduling, monitoring, and managing data workflows efficiently. So with these tools, we will be going through how we can build a data pipeline. So here, we can see where this tool fits in the data lifecycle. So on the left side, there is a data source. So the data coming from different data source gets ingested and gets loaded into the BigQuery. So once the data gets loaded into the BigQuery, which will be the data warehouse, those data will then be transformed according to the business in the business standards and get transformed by using DBT, and that transformed data can now be used in different analytical purpose or by different business stakeholders. So this is how DBT and BigQuery comes into the pictures while we build the data pipelines. At Bingo, we are dealing with 11 different data sources, some of them being the databases, some of them are connected through API connectors, some of them are just flat files, which are in the S3, and we are connecting our data warehouse with the S3. So all these 11 different data sources are connected and streamlined and loaded to the Google BigQuery, which will then be transformed by DBT in an hourly basis, and then that will be used for analyticals and reporting purposes. So with this, now let's see how we get to automate this pipeline. So as I mentioned before as well, Airflow is a job scheduler. It triggers job in a scheduled frequency at Bingo every hour to fetch data from all these 11 data sources and gets into the data warehouse. So once the data gets into the data warehouse, the DBT job processes those data with all the DBT models and then updates all the reportings on an hourly basis. So now what happens is with the CI/CD pipeline, we have streamlined this process to make sure that we solve the issue before it happens in the production. So once the developer make any changes in the DBT model, pushes the codes into the development, so the code will then be processed in the dev environment And once it runs successfully in dev environment, it will then be pushed into the integration environment. So the code gets processed in integration environment as well, which will then be merged to production environment. So by the time it gets into the production environment, the data, the query will be thoroughly tested in the dev and integration, and then only merged into production. For instance, one of my colleagues recently, it just happened last week, so imported one of my colleague wanted to import a seed file in the DBT model. So she introduced that model in one of the DBT model. Introduced that seed file in one of this DBT model, but then missed to import it in the DBT itself. So what happened is when the query process in the dev environment, it didn't find the seed file, which made the dev environment to fail. Fortunately, we had this pipeline set up, which gave us the error message in the Slack notification, and we were able to fix this issue. Imagine if we hadn't this pipeline in place, that would cause several reports to fail and would require more time to solve the issues than how we solved it at first place within the dev environment. So this example clearly shows that CI/CD is as important in data engineering as it is in software engineering, if not more. With Airflow and CI/CD, we can streamline our process, schedule our jobs, make sure that the changes flows smoothly from one environment to another environment, and without manual interventions and less errors. So this is how we can leverage different tools. In this case, DBT, CI/CD, Apache Airflow, and BigQuery to streamline our data process, to make it automated, and to minimize the manual interventions and the errors. So with this, let's see how we can synchronize all this system with one of the Bingo workflows. So for instance, I'll be going through one of the most common use cases that happens at Bingo all the time. So let's suppose we have a customer and the customer confirms a job. So once a customer confirms a job, the allocator allocates the job to the driver via driver's app. So we have a driver app which the allocators and driver use for jobs scheduling and logging purpose. So once the allocator allocates the job, driver gets the notification and then starts the shift. So let's say the job is to pick up a waste, recycling waste from the mental office, the location that we are right now, to urban recycling center, to the nearest recycling center, let's say urban recycling center for now. So the driver starts the shift, drives to the urban recycling center, drives to the mental office, the designated location, and once they get in, they pick up the recycling waste from the mental office, drives to the nearest recycling center, which, for instance, urban recycling center. Once it gets into the recycling center, the trucks get waste. So in the weigh bridge. So the weigh bridge here is a large scale, also known as truck scale, which is a large scale to which weighs the vehicle and the entire vehicle and their contents. So now when it gets waste in the weigh bridge system, now the Weighbridge admin will enter the details, the weight of the truck race, or the type of waste that is in the truck, the driver's record. So the Weighbridge admin enter all this data into the Weighbridge system, and then now the truck will dump the waste in the recycling center, return back. While returning back, the truck gets weighed in the Weighbridge system again, and then the driver ends the shift. So now let's see, this is one of the workflows that happens at Bingo. Now let's see how data are logged within these workflows. And the workflows like this happens more than hundreds of times at Bingo in different recycling centers. So here, the data from the Weighbridge application, the data from drivers application, all of these databases are in the gets into the PostgreSQL. So from the PostgreSQL, the Airflow triggers a job every hour to get data from all these different data sources. In this case, PostgreSQL to the data warehouse. Once the data gets into the data warehouse, the DBT then processes this data, transforms this data, and then the changes will now be reflected in all the reportings, and user can use it, the consumers can use it for analyticals and reporting purpose. And all this happens with Airflow and CI/CDs without any manual interventions, and every hour. Imagine if someone has to do this manually without any automations in place. That would be a hectic job for a person to do it every hour, run 11 different data sources, get the data into the data warehouse. So this is how automation works in data engineering, and this is how we have implemented automations with these different tools at Bingo, streamlining our jobs. So with this, to wrap up with, I have three key takeaways that you can take from the session. Modern data pipelines benefits for automations. I think we are kind of clear how it benefits us, how it has been benefiting us at Bingo and can benefit at your organizations as well. Leverage the right tools, improve efficiency. Using tools like DBT, Airflow, CI/CD makes your data pipeline more reliable, efficient, scalable, and automated. Start small, iterate, and automate. Like, start with the beginning small, improve gradually, and scale up. Explore these tools, start automating your work data pipelines, and feel free to connect for more discussions. Thank you. If you have any questions, please.
Can you go to the slide back? Yeah, no, please. Yeah, this one. How is data coming from production to dev and non-production environment? Is it real data there, or you find it somehow, or what is the process?
That's a good question. Thank you. So the data between dev and productions there are different pipelines for data and productions. For instance, our analytical systems rely on production, which means data comes into the production warehouse every hour. But in dev, since it is not used for any analytical purpose or not used in the production system, so the data in dev environment runs as a bad job once every midnight. So like the data pipelines are set for dev environment separately and production environment separately. It's the query which are CI/CD, which are version control. So the queries, or let's say the DBT models, they are CI/CD. So they first goes into the dev environment, runs there, validates the data, tests the data, and if it gets successful into the dev environment, moves to another environment, and then finally to the production environment. If that answers your questions?
So data source is the same for the whole.
Yes, data source is the same, but they are streamlined separately. Any more questions?
Anima, good to see a fellow data engineer in house. Just out of curiosity, wanted to know what do you think are the latest emerging trends in data space, and do you see any of them getting adopted in your organization?
I think that's a very big question, and I think the data tools depends on organization. Some organization use some kind of data tools, some uses other kinds of data tools. At Bingo, as I mentioned, we use Airflow, BigQuery. We have GitHub Actions for CI/CD, and we use DBT. But different organizations use different stacks.
Like in our organization, we also had this problem of manual deployments. We have also started migrating to CI/CD now, using Azure DevOps pipelines. Like these tools, did they come out of necessity in your organization? Like they adopted, or Like they're already there when you were working?
Oh, for my in my case, it were already there. They were already there in my organization. But as I mentioned you before as well, like I come from a background where I had to deploy it separately. For example, in my previous role, while I was working back in Nepal, we had the system where we had a username for each of the employees, and we had to log into the system and then deploy once in the production, come back again if it runs successful in dev, and then logs into the production server again, and then deploy it in the production environment. So that was a challenge that I had faced previously. But though it was already in place when I came to Bingo, but I can see the impact that it has in the workflows, in the pipelines, and how automation works as well.
So I've been doing data for like the last 5 years aggressively, and the tools are quite varied. And as Anima pointed out, based on the needs of the company, like you can choose any out of dozens. But the macro trend I see is everything is moving towards software. So you do infrastructure as code. Now you do more of things as code, whatever you could, even governance. So I think that's a macro trend, right? The data world used to be like SSIs, packages, and used to do a lot, but that's where we go. So I think the convergence will continue. The more and more data engineering, data science used to be all like PhD field, but now that's becoming software as well. Similarly, I think governance is going to be big, and governance is going to be as code as well. So it's like Terraform, later in the future, we'll do governance. So I think that's the macro trend to pick up. The tooling is, as Anima pointed out, is varied, and that'll continue to evolve. It'll be different tomorrow as we have.
Yeah, that's a nice answer. Thank you for that. Is there any more questions? All right. I think we can catch up later as well if you have any more. But for now, thank you so much for being so patient.